What's going on, everybody? This is Peter from CodeBoost, and in this tutorial we're going to take a look at HTML. HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It's the language of the web. It's the way to make websites. So we are going to make a website of our own. We're going to build a web page and test out some basic HTML elements. Let's go ahead and get started. Alright, go ahead and get your code editor opened up, as well as a web browser to view the web page in. We're going to go ahead and get started by creating an index.html file. You can actually call this file whatever you like, as long as it ends in .html. I am using Visual Studio Code here. Also, feel free to use whichever code editor you want to use. I personally like this one, and we can go ahead and get started by adding a doc type header to the top of our page. And this is just some boilerplate code we're going to include at the top of every HTML file, just to let the browser know that we're about to write an HTML file. And before we get started, I want to talk about a concept called elements. In HTML, almost everything we use is an element, and almost every element comprises of two tags. And a tag is simply going to be, well, here's an example. This is a tag. It is what's called an opening tag. And we'll also have a closing tag. And the tag has a name surrounded by some angle brackets. If it's an opening tag, it will just have the name. If it's a closing tag, it will have a / before the name. And everything inside of these two tags is our element. And in every HTML element, we are also going to include a head element, as well as a body element. And you notice each of these elements as well has two tags. The head is where we are going to include all of the information on our web page that actually doesn't show up on the window or the page, but is still relevant. So think social media information, search engine information. We're actually also going to include a title element. So add a title here, and we can put some text in between. So I'm just going to say HTML tutorial. And you'll notice we can actually also put text in between our elements, as well as other elements in the case of the title element between the head. And the body element is going to include all of the visible elements on the page. So one element that we could use is an H1 element. And this is a header element. And we can use H1, H2, H3, H4, all the way through H6. The H1, the 1 in H1 just stands for the biggest header, whereas H6 would be the smallest header. So now if we go ahead and save and drag our index.html file into the browser, we'll see our text is actually displayed to the screen. And this is just a header because it's some bold text and it's a little bit bigger than usual. We can also create a P or paragraph element. And this is best if you are just trying to write lines of text and include that on the screen. If we go ahead and save and refresh, we'll see just some standard normal sized text on the screen. And that's going to be kind of our process here. We're going to save here, and we're going to refresh here on in the browser. So we'll save in the text editor, refresh in the browser. And there are ways to speed up this process and development, but for now, this is just some kind of introductory HTML stuff, and we can just go ahead and use this process. Another element we can create under our paragraph is a link, and we can go ahead and do the same thing, save and refresh, and we'll notice that the link actually looks just like the paragraph. We can't actually click on it, and the reason for this is because we haven't specified where we want this link to go yet. And in order to do that, we're going to have to add an attribute to our link. So if we go to our A tag here, which is our link tag, and we go ahead and add a space after the A in the opening tag, we can add an Href attribute. And an attribute is going to be a value that we set equal to some parentheses. And this property, the Href property, is going to have some value that's associated with it. So here we can put a URL. We can put any URL. I'm just going to put the URL for my website just to get it working. And if we save and refresh here, we'll see it is underlined, it's blue, and we can click on it to go out to another page. So we can go back. This is how we just make links in HTML. We're going to have to make sure to add that property, that href attribute. It's called an attribute when it's on an element, and then when it gets applied to this element on the screen, then it becomes a property. So it's kind of a small distinction, but just also good to know. We can also include a UL, which would be an unordered list element. And a UL element is actually going to have some LI elements inside it. And LI stands for list item. So we'll have a list of things. We can say the first element for this one. And we can include another LI element underneath it. Maybe we'll say second element for this one, just a basic example. And you'll see we can also include multiple elements within an element. HTML has this tree structure to it, so we can have as many elements as we want in each specific element, and most elements can include text inside them. So let's go ahead and save and refresh, and we'll see we get some buttons. We get some bullets here. We have a bulleted list. That's the unordered list. We can change the UL to an OL. If we save and refresh, we'll get some numbers. We'll get a numbered list. This is the ordered list element. And another element that we can use is a button. So we can add some text in here. And we'll save, give it a refresh, and we'll see we have a button here. It doesn't actually do anything, but we can now, if we were to use JavaScript, we could connect it and run some function. If we clicked on it, we'd have all the style set up. Another element we can do is an input element. And an input in general is only actually going to have one tag. It's going to be what's called a self-closing tag. So after the tag name, we'll put the / and then we'll close the tag. It's actually only going to be one tag in this case. And the main reason for this is because we don't usually put things inside input elements. They kind of work out of the box, so we only need one tag. If we use two tags, it will work, but the convention is just to use one tag. So if we save and refresh, we'll see we can type into this box. We can put letters, any character we want. And another element that we can do is an image element. And an image is actually another element that is commonly self-closing. We're only gonna need to apply which image it is. We're not actually going to usually put text inside or other elements inside our images, but we will need to put a property here. So on our image tag, we'll put an src or source property or source attribute. Excuse me, this is going to be double quotes here. And here we're going to need to put some image URL, and to find one, we can just go to Google image search. I'm going to just type animals in here just to get some picture. It doesn't really matter what we use. And once you have the picture, we can right click, open the image in the new tag, and get the URL here for the actual image. And if we paste this here into our document, if we go ahead and save, go back to our page and refresh, we'll see that image was actually also included on the screen. So that's a way we can include images. We don't actually have to host them ourselves. We can use images that are on the web. Another element that can be used in HTML is a div element. And a div is actually it's commonly used as a container element for other elements or text. And a div it's pretty much just a generic container element. There's no real good reason to use a div, but if you have multiple elements on the page and you need to lay them out in a certain way, especially when you get into CSS and styling your pages, then having divs will help you organize your code. You might often see a div within a div, and this is just something that you're going to run across for sure. So we can go ahead and add a div, and if we save and refresh, we'll notice it is just a little bit of text on the screen. It's just a very basic element, but the more we get into styling, the more these will really come into play. And these are pretty much all of the main elements that we're going to use in HTML. There's definitely dozens of other elements that we can apply. A lot of them have very small differences. We can have tables and videos and things like that. But for the most part, you can make a fully functional web page with just these elements, these HTML elements. And there are actually two other elements that don't include HTML in them. They include other coding languages in them, but I think it would be good to just kind of look at them here. So if we go underneath our title element in our head, let's go ahead and add a style element here, set of style tags. This is not going to contain HTML inside. It is actually going to contain CSS, or cascading style sheets. It's a way to style your web pages. We'll just give a quick example here just to show you how it works. If we were to say H1 and then open some curly brackets, we could put a style rule inside. We could say color, green, and then a semicolon. And if we go ahead and save and refresh, we'll see that the header is made green. It's because this has selected all of our H1 tags, in this case just this one, and it's made the text color green, as we see here. So this is how we can include CSS styles in the page. We can also include JavaScript in the page. So I'm going to go underneath this div here at the end right before the body, and I'm going to go ahead and add a script element. And similarly to the style element, the script element does not contain any HTML. It contains JavaScript. So anything we write in between these script tags will be interpreted by the browser as JavaScript. And just as an example, we could say document.query selector with a capital S, some parentheses, add some double quotes inside, h1 dot inner text with a capital T equals, in double quotes, hello. So I know this might seem like a lot, especially if you've never seen JavaScript before, but if we go ahead and save, give it a refresh, we will see that we've got the hello is on the screen. And this is just simply a way to adjust the text on one of our elements. All this says is grab the HTML element here and select the first H1 tag and change the inner text in that H1 tag to be hello. And we see that the text in that H1 tag is changed to hello. And so this has been pretty much a basic introduction to HTML. The HTML is one of the it's one of the quickest things to learn in web development. A lot of the more heavier lifting comes into play when you get into CSS and JavaScript, but there are a lot of details that you need to know in HTML. There is plenty to practice, and so HTML is definitely a good starting spot if you're trying to become a web developer, if you're trying to get into web development, if you're trying to build your own web page. Definitely want to learn what some of these tags are, what some of the properties you can apply to them are, and really just practice laying out web pages like this. I think learning CSS is a great place to go after this. JavaScript, can't go wrong there either. But for the most part, I would say just get comfortable with each of these tags and how a web page is laid out. And from there, you can learn just about anything in web development. And so this has been a brief introduction to HTML. If you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this, go ahead and subscribe to our channel at Code Boost. Check out the website at code-boost.com. And thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day.